Welcome back to the World Lens podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Evans, and today we are joined by my stalwart co host, Bruce McIndoe. Long time no see. How are you?
I know I'm doing great. Spending some time in Europe, but now I've been this week on the Pacific Coast in Sonoma, California. So no complaints.
I'll say it again. I want to be like you when I grow up. So, our topic today is somewhat a bit abstract, but I think everybody has an opinion about it, especially if you're following the news. I'm going to call it vibes versus data. So, first things first, let's set the stage. Bruce, when it comes to the economy and the world right now, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I guess as a risk manager and a forecaster, I am deeply concerned. For both the U.S. and the global economy and system. More importantly, as you know, part of my megatrends briefings that I give and have gave to the institute really for the last decade. I've talked about deglobalization. I've talked about kind of the evolving multipolar order of the world, from U.S. led to bipolar, China, U.S., rising India, all of those changes that are going on. And then the structural impacts that we see from the rapid adoption of robotics and AI. So kind of talking about that for a decade, these changes are inevitable, and we have to deal with them. But the challenge that I think for myself and many others is that the rate of change that's occurring right now is just making everyone have a bad vibe. So yeah, so it's just the level of change and uncertainty right now. I would say is what kind
Yeah.
of I'm feeling and people are feeling.
Clearly, you are not alone because the World Happiness Report, this study, it kind of looks at the number of different attributes for each country and ranks them. As in the US, we've typically ranked pretty high, but this year we fell to 24th. It's our lowest rank. So, why have we fallen so low?
So this is that data versus vibe. I
Mm-hmm.
was, I saw the data, and you look at it and say, okay, 24 out of, I don't know, 100 something countries that were ranked. But when you dig into it, there are some really interesting things. One is, while we have historically, quote unquote, ranked high, we've systematically gone down over the last decade from about I think the high was in 2012 of 11, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that systematic decline is concerning, right? And I guess the other thing is that these rankings, that how the data that they use is not the same every year. It's fairly consistent, but they add new data points. And in this particular report, they did put more stress on kind of like social contact and social interactions and those kinds of things, thinking about personal well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at the data here that the two key things were: one, bringing that in, and the other was that Americans under 30 are extremely unhappy in the United States. Extremely.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, what the data said here, and I'm just looking now, it said that if they used the data on just that cohort, we would
Mm-hmm.
rank not even in the top 60.
Wow. I mean, I'm not
Yeah,
surprised.
exactly. So I dug into that. Just two quick things is like, wow. So one was that nearly, what was it, 1 in 5, so 20% of young adults in this cohort said they have no one that they can count on for support.
Mm.
So that's like a loneliness factor, right?
Yeah, that's
Just
sad.
feeling like you're out there by yourself, right? And the other one, which I thought was interesting, and this was a new data point this in this survey, was that the number of people dining alone has increased by 53% since
Mm.
2003, when they had data on this in another survey.
Wow.
So I think it's this like loss of social cohesion, the families, and people just feeling that they're on their own. right? So
Do
anyway,
you think
that's
COVID may have had anything to do with it? I mean, we were
oh,
all separated for
absolutely.
so
We'll
long.
get to that.
So it's interesting that we've, fallen behind two of our neighbors, Mexico and Canada, ranked 10th and 18th respectively. What does that say about us if both of them are doing well, but we're not?
Again, it's, I think most people would, at least on the Canada front, would kind of understand that. But let's put one thing in perspective. Canada as well has declined over the
Mm-hmm.
last decade, right? So they're at their peak, they were five. And so, really up there with the Nordic countries, and
Right.
so it's all not all roses, but the key thing for Canada is they actually ranked number one in quality of life, right? That looked
Hmm.
at that they were a good place to live, the economy's good
Mm-hmm.
enough, politicians are sensible, right? Education is great, healthcare is accessible and available to everyone, so all of those parameters, and the nature of the country, the openness and what they have to offer, is what pulls them up,
Mm-hmm.
way beyond, way above where we are, because our health system and all these other dimensions, we
Yeah.
rank actually quite poorly as far as taking care of our citizens. For Mexico, the data was all around that family cohesion, family and
Mm-hmm.
children, and those kinds of things, and feeling part of a social fabric, was the data that kept them
Mm-hmm.
higher as well. So when you contrast those parameters with us, you can see how we kind of fall down. Right, we get hit in two
Yeah.
areas.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Hmm.
Now, happiness isn't an objective measure at all, but
Yeah.
the regular US job report is. Last week, we saw a report that the job market remains steady, but fewer opportunities exist. What does that really mean? Aren't companies
So
hiring?
again, this it's this data versus vibe, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's media and people, they don't dig into this, right? So they get these, like, what we call the spot numbers, right? These are the
Mm-hmm.
weekly, claims that are made, and how many people are, out looking for work on any particular week, and how that tracks over time, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so that's uh data that's there, but what is it, what's it really telling us? And so kind of the concern, I guess, around all of this is the longer term trends of what we're seeing below that. And when I started kind of looking and saying, okay, if you look at the spot numbers, it's like, what is it, 1.8 million people, quote unquote, are looking for work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? And where are the, it doesn't say anything about jobs. Like, what are the number of jobs that are available? It's just, it's
Right.
just claims. So in that period, 1.8 million people were submitting and participating in the unemployment arena, right?
Mm.
So that does there could be another 6 million people that are looking for work that aren't, trying to get unemployment compensation and those,
Right.
claims and that kind of stuff. So again, you have to look at that. What is that data representing versus the bigger picture? And when I was looking at this, it kind of like a little bit heartbreaking. We lost 1.7 million workers during the pandemic. Poof,
Wow.
gone, right? Of the 30 million people that lost their jobs during the pandemic, 30 million, right? The key thing was 66%. This was a survey last year. 66% say that they were only somewhat or not at all looking for a new job.
Wonder why.
Well, hold on. So those that the people, right? 66%, let's say 50% or 40% of those 30 million people aren't even submitting claims,
Right.
right?
Wow.
So there's a lot more structural things going on underneath this, that we have to kind of, think through. And when you look at other things, and we can talk about this later, is about, well, what is the job situation? How is it viewed from companies, and in a bigger survey around how many job openings are there, and those kinds of things. It's a very different picture than that, again, that weekly spot data that's out there.
Yeah, same with the unemployment rate. It's hovering around like 4.1%.
Hmm.
Clearly, the numbers aren't capturing the whole story.
Exactly. And so, this is, so one of the key measures of labor market is the labor participation rate, right?
Hmm.
And if if we had a labor participation rate that we had going into COVID, so like January, February 2020, today, so that's the percentage of working and able to age people participating
Hmm.
in the labor market. If we had what we had before, just before the COVID, if we had that today, 3 million more people would be in the market working.
Hmm.
Yeah. So there's been and obviously a lot of those people are not participating now, right? So even
Right.
on the unemployment side, it's challenging. And the if we look at, the Chamber of Commerce put out a report actually just a few days ago about how businesses, and they look at, they survey companies for job openings. They look at, quitting and all the different parameters,
Hmm.
and they're basically saying, look, there are, what is it, like, I think it was 8 million um, jobs that the companies are looking to fulfill, and only 6.7 million workers to fill them.
Mm.
So the Commerce Department and the macro picture is looking at this saying, look, we don't have enough employees right now, enough potential
Employees. Hmm.
employees with labor participation to fill the jobs that are out there. So there's this huge mismatch between this, what we feel and what we see in the media around claims and the unemployment percentage, and businesses that are saying we don't have enough employees
Hmm.
to fill roles. And when you start looking at this and saying, where does that go, it actually goes in the direction of what the chamber is saying, because what we're seeing on the trend lines is the aging of America. So there's fewer
Hmm.
available workers. We have many, many people that have gone out of the market, that have changed their lifestyle, or they women that have become homemakers, or men,
Hmm.
all changed, like the nature of what they're doing and not participating, right? And then the other
Right.
challenge is the level of immigration to fill jobs that we don't have as Americans, because we're aging and those kind of things, has decreased
Hmm.
significantly. So all of those trends, the chamber is saying, whoa, guys, we don't have enough people to run the economy and generate the GDP. Therefore, we're going to get really serious about automation, robotics, AI,
AI.
to increase the
Hmm.
productivity of the people that we do have, so we can continue to generate the GDP that we're producing, right? So that's what's fueling a lot of this just massive investment, hundreds of billions of dollars in those technology areas, to counteract what companies see as the long-term trend, that we don't have enough people.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's also a number that a lot of people are using right now to determine if things are good or bad, and that is the cost of eggs. Have you bought eggs recently? I just paid $8.99 for a dozen. I didn't think I'd have to be balling to afford eggs.
So I have bought eggs. I guess I'm kind of fortunate. My eggs are in the $4 to $5 range,
Hmm.
in Annapolis. But was up in New York City, poking around, and went into, like, Whole Foods or Target, just
Mm-hmm.
to kind of see, spot check what's there. And I look at it, it's like, it was like $10 and something for like
It's
regular, and it was like
crazy.
$12, $1 an egg for like organic,
Mm-hmm.
handcrafted eggs, right? And yeah, so it is pretty crazy.
It is. I mean, I know the price hike is affected by the bird flu that's currently impacting chickens, but is there more to it? Like, what is really happening? Do they really have to be that expensive because of the bird flu, or is it something else?
Again, any situation like this is it's there's never one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing, I guess, what I love, and I'm actually going to be using the egg situation as a classic kind of like multi-dimensional supply and demand problem, right?
Okay.
But it's so fundamental. So just economics, right? If the supply is low and the demand is high, people are going to bid up the price, right?
Right.
And we see that with diamonds and
Mm-hmm.
famous art where there's one, right? So in the case of eggs, it is a supply and demand. So it's in the beginning, what happened to the supply? Well, they had to cull millions and millions of birds, right,
Right.
to address this, a very highly lethal virus. I think it can be 90 percentage type fatality for chickens as
Mm-hmm.
as it's evolved over time. So anyway, so he wiped out that supply. Well, that supply cannot be immediately like, okay, well, bring in the next 5 million chickens and start laying
Chickens.
eggs,
Yeah.
right? So the supply of you know chickens that can be producers that have to be hatched and matured and then put in the market was not prepared to meet that kind of demand for chickens, right? So even those costs came up, right, as people were bidding to get chickens so they could get their production back online. And then they had to go and build and create more capacity and get more eggs in the process of turning them into chickens, which delayed and has delayed restocking the supply of egg producing chickens. So that whole complexity is going on and also increasing costs because people are bidding up wanting chickens. So that's that side of it. The other side of it is that we love eggs. And so the demand side, actually, when prices go to 10 or $12, the way the market works normally, when you just have supply and demand balancing out, is that demand goes down because more and more people aren't going to pay that price. Well, because we use eggs in so many things, bread and other bakery items and pre-processed food, the quiches and all the stuff that we do, all that manufacturing is continuing to generate pretty consistent demand of people that want those products every day, right? And we love eggs and we want those every day. So demand stayed very consistent and high as supply plummeted, and you get this a massive bid up of $1 an egg, right? And so that's what's happening out there.
So there's also been some uncertainty around tariffs. The administration announces new ones, delays, rescinds, then adds them back again. And that's just like over a course of a couple days. So, what is the strategy, if there is any at all, with all this back and forth?
I guess at the top level, I'm not seeing any coherent grand strategy. So that's a challenge, and I think for everyone in the market that's watching this and trying to figure it out, there are isolated strategies like raising tariffs to motivate people to bring and develop more manufacturing within the United States, right? So that's like this, oh, that's great. Let's bring manufacturing home, right? So, yeah, in time, these will evolve, but you don't just like throw up tariffs and then snap your fingers and have new
And it's
manufacturing
better.
plants, right? so
Yeah.
so there's a lot of underlying reason that countries use tariffs and other types of trade you know barriers and decisions. So that's the, I guess, the one concern. And I really feel like, and I think, I'm not alone in this, that what they see happening, this, on again, off again, it's like the administration is kind of learning as they go, right? So they're basically seeing opportunities just around the threat of tariffs. And then that kind of becomes a game. It's like, okay, Mexico, if you don't do this, we're going to throw tariffs up, or Canada or Greenland or whoever it is, right? It's like you use this as a cudgel to get attention and get some concessions and get people talking. Okay, well that's a strategy, and it's out there, but they're obviously getting significant pushback from the market, from farmers, from manufacturers, and others that are saying, look, these tariffs are not going to be good for us as a country and in our business. And so I guess my concern at the end of this is I'm not seeing a coherent strategy. And what I don't see is the understanding that this is an incredibly complex system and that you can perturbate one part of the system and get unintended consequences rippling throughout the whole system. And I think that's my concern. That's many people's concerns about what's happening. On the positive side is, as we've seen, you can put a tariff up 25% on automobiles and next month snap your fingers and take them away. Right. So it's not like it's a big structural thing that's very difficult to change. Obviously, it's easy. And then you kind of end up with more uncertainty than you do necessarily pain. So we'll see how it plays out
Yeah.
in time.
So how does this bode for, the big R word, recession? We have to see like two consecutive quarters of negative GDP to officially be in a recession, right?
Hmm.
So if that's the case, why are there so many articles out here looking for recession indicators right now? Wouldn't we already know it?
Okay, yeah, again, this is kind of like, a data versus vibe, right?
Vibes,
So
yeah.
obviously, if we're going to decline over 2 quarters, then we need to have 6 months worth of data. When do you actually get that picture of 6 months of data is 1 2 months into the next quarter. So we can't declare a recession without solid data, which puts us at, from month one of when the recession starts. It's going to be like 8 months before we can declare that we are in a recession that was started 8 months ago, right? So it's that lag, and so that's why people look at a lot of other indicators. With that, we call it a lagging GDP growth. As far as recession is a lagging indicator because you get it when you can actually report it, and then people look at a lot of data to try to figure out, well, what does economic activity look like, and what do we think the GDP is before we have the real number. But I guess this the thing that I look at is what are businesses saying? What are people that are knowledgeable? So this would be in the case of one of the reports. It was CFOs of major multinational corporations. This is where it's a little, I guess, taken back because since last year through the election, people are a little bit more optimistic. Today, 60% of corporate CFOs, and this is just data from a couple of days ago, said that we would see a recession in the back half of this year. So, in the first quarter of 2026, we would have data that says that we are in a recession coming, through the back half of this year. Another 15% said that we would see a recession in 2026. So 60 plus 15 is 75% of CFOs surveyed are saying we are going to head into a recession at the end of this year or into 2026. That and this same cohort in like November was in the 20 to 30%. So they're strongly saying prepare for a recession, and we're seeing that in the numbers and through reports like through the chamber and elsewhere, where companies are starting to trim, around, reduce operations, reduce travel, even hiring, and in some cases laying off, slimming down in preparation for that headwind in the back half of the year or into 2026. So we have that tension going on right now in the labor market.
you know, all about the vibes, and that is not a good one. So all these things combined seem to be contributing to this vibe of uncertainty that people are feeling. Even if people who are doing well and companies who are doing well, like they're feeling this way. Why?
So I guess you have to start. We're all humans, right? Humans do not like change, and they definitely don't like uncertainty. Okay, so when you combine those, it's like a double whammy, right? And so, and I would say both of those things right now, at least in my my arc of my career, are probably the highest right now. Not probably. I'm going to say personally for me, if I look at the longitudinal, right back for 40 years, this is worth the peak of change and uncertainty, and the pace at which that's happening, right? And so if we wonder why so many have so much angst, it's because of those just basic human, ugh, I don't want things to change, and I want more certainty about my future. It's like, I have a 401k that I'm counting on for retirement, right? And I'm watching the market go crazy and talking of reception, and it's like, no, I don't like that, right? So change is tough. I guess, it's normal to be concerned. Most people do not have kind of the financial cushion to take any kind of shock, and a loss of a job would be traumatic. Just like, single parent that has one job to take care of the family. I mean, so because of the nature of the workforce now and how many people, I think that there was a survey I just looked at a couple weeks ago that surveyed. It was actually on. It was women, that 50 some percent of women surveyed in the workforce, so working women, had no savings for retirement, right? So that micro point, I think, is broader in our, and so when you start talking about, like, either eliminating or decreasing social, this is not just angst. This is like fear. This is like panic, right? So all of that is just bubbling underneath the surface right now as people are trying to sort out, where are we going.
Speaking of where we're going, you're all about advising risks in the future. Are there any bright spots you see?
So there are, and it's like, I almost feel like, like I grew up in my youth in Mississippi and dealt with Hurricane Camille and all those, and I kind of liken it to that. I liken it to, you have a life and you're doing things, and then, but for this period of time, the world is crashing, literally crashing in on you, right? So I just feel like right now we're in a hurricane, right? And the energy of that hurricane is going to dissipate, and the constituents that are impacted by that hurricane are now going to collectively, how do we clean up and put this back together, right? And to some degree, in the Project 2025, that whole thing, which is somewhat being executed right now, is that it's like, let's break it, and then we'll put it back together how we want it, right? And so that will happen, and some of the damage will be long lasting when you lose trust and of your partner countries and those kinds of things. But it is obviously an opportunity to kind of rebuild and go forward. So I feel like we're there. And so I have, the bright spot for me is, and has always been, under my reasons for hope when I do my megatrends uh, briefing, is technology and innovation and the resilience of humans and our economy. And but it's just, if we think about the hundreds of billions of dollars that are being spent on AI and robotics and technology right now, because businesses also see this trend line of, we don't have enough labor to fill the current positions, and it's going to continue to grow. That if they invest in this and start deploying automation through robots and industrial automation and AI to where, Michelle, you can do things, 6 times more with less effort, right? That's huge. The productivity gains that we would get. So that's what they're betting on, and why that market is just going, gangbusters, is because businesses are saying, we see that light at the end of the tunnel, that we can actually produce more at less cost with fewer humans. But don't worry about fewer humans meaning no humans. Do it as fewer humans, because we don't have enough that we need now, right? And so that's, I guess, the bright part of this. Will there be displacement of workers? Will workers, a certain category of workers and kind of jobs, potentially disappear? Yes. And again, and that's what breaks my heart when you get rid of the Department of Education. One of the key things that we need are community level retooling and retraining of workforce, right? To be agile and be able to take jobs as they ebb and flow in the years ahead, right? So the education and training is going to be, adult education and training is going to be critical. Whoa. Now we're taking the federal, steering wheel out and saying, states, figure it out, right? So anyway, so I would say, the storm's here. We'll get through it, and we'll piece it back together. And I hope with technology and innovation, we're going to have an opportunity to make things better.
Let's hope you're right. So, last question. Like I mentioned, there are a lot of bad vibes happening, and how are you keeping the bad vibes away from you? Like, how are you remaining optimistic in this time?
Yeah, obviously, I look at things in a different perspective than most, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the nature of my work, and looking at things, in looking at decades out, not just looking at week or quarter.
Right.
I guess for me, I guess I ground myself on kind of a three-legged stool, right? So I would say I have belief in the inherent resilience of humankind. So that's like probably the most important. The second is, for us in the United States, I feel like democracy can prevail, and that technology and innovation can address many of the challenges that we face, that we've talked about in the last half an hour, right? So humans and democracy and technology and innovation, to me, are the legs of the stool that give us the platform to persevere and prosper. And that's how I keep my thumb up.
I like it. Well, Bruce, it was great talking to you.
Sure.
Thank you all for tuning in. Visit us at WTCI.org for more information and insights, and be sure to follow us on all social channels at WTC Institute. We'll see you next week.